Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. So ESPN has just produced their latest and greatest pound-for-pound rankings. And let me tell you, you just can't make this stuff up. So you can take a look at the list. I'll go ahead and read it to you. You can read along. Half of you probably already skimmed down the list and probably saying the same thing as what I said when I saw Devin Haney ranked as the number 10 out of the in this list. It's just very offensive. I can't see why Top Rank, who Devin belongs to now, won't endorse him as a lightweight undisputed champion. So coming in at number 1, Terrence Crawford, Nayu Inoue, Earl Spence Jr., Canelo Alvarez, Tyson Fury, Usyk, Lomachenko, Bivol, Stevenson, Haney. Now, when you look at this list, right, some of those names belong in that ranking stack. But as far as the order they have them in, I'm not quite sure about that. So the number 1 they have, Terrence Crawford. You know, we can argue that Terrence Crawford should be number 1. Some people would argue that Earl Spence should be number 1. Some people are going to argue that Canelo would be number 1. But when you look at what these guys have accomplished out of these names on here, Terrence Crawford probably belongs in that number 1 position, ahead of Canelo. And although Canelo is undisputed at 168, okay, Canelo has recently taken a loss. And he's taken a loss before the Floyd, which doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you agree with the opponents Canelo's faced, as far as his cherry picking or just being very strategic. Canelo's done a lot of great work. He has a lot of great wins. But I can definitely see why Terrence Crawford is pound for pound ranked number 1, not just on this ESPN list, across a lot of lists he is. And he deserves that. He really does. He's proven that he can make adjustments. He's proven that he knows how to deal with adversity. He knows how to overcome it. He knows once he overcomes it, he knows how to take control of the fight and go on to get a victory, if not a knockout. I haven't seen Inoue, he's yet to see Inoue go through that. Earl Spence Jr. has yet to go through that. Alvarez was in a position, going through it, didn't figure it out. Okay? So that's why, for me, Terrence Crawford is the number 1. Tyson Fury, quite arguably, could be in the number 1 spot too. But when you look at the work Terrence Crawford did at 140 pounds, right? Damn, ear was itching. When you look at the work that he did at 140 pounds to become undisputed, that's huge. He clipped all the champions. He did what he was supposed to do. Came up to one, and it was 30, what? Crawford started at 135, 140, 147. And some people will argue, well, he hasn't faced the better opposition when comparing him to Earl Spence. And I would say to that, maybe he hasn't fought Danny Garcia. Maybe he didn't fight Keith Thurman. But when he did get in there with Sean Porter, he got him out of there. But you can say, well, Sean Porter was damaged goods already. He fought Garcia, he fought Thurman, he fought Spence. Spence hurt him. Adrian Broner hurt him, so you can't really give Crawford the credit for beating a guy like Porter. And I would say those fights that Porter had with those guys, let's say it took a little bit out of him. Let's say it did, okay? But I don't think that's the reason why Terrence Crawford was able to get him out of there. I think Terrence Crawford was in tough with Jeff Horn. See, Jeff Horn made it very uncomfortable for Crawford. Crawford was in there tough against the fighter with the last name begins with a K. Terrence Crawford had to figure some things out because those guys are bringing the heat to him. And I think when Terrence Crawford was in there with such physical fighters like that, who aren't going to make it easy, he had to figure out what to do to blunt his opponent's offense. and to make sure he can get his shots off, not get hit, hurt his guy, and get him out of there. And Terrence Crawford did that, because when he was fighting Jeff Horn tried to make it ugly. He tried to make it rough, but Crawford persevered. He got in there with the guy with the last name K. Rough fight for Terrence Crawford. He was looking in bad shape, but once he figured it out, he saw what he did. Now, I think those two fights really are what helped Crawford in the Porter fight, because he had to deal with a similar style in Horn, and then the guy whose last name begins with a K. So guys who are going to be on you, letting shots go, and Horn in particular, very rough and rugged. So when he came across Porter, who he's already sparred before, he already knew Porter, it wasn't something he really had to figure out. But Porter did make it hard for him. But Crawford, like he always does, starts downloading that data, and once he figures things out, it's lights out. So going in there with a guy like Earl Spence, who did Earl Spence fight? Mikey Garcia. Earl Spence didn't get him out of there. No power or anything. Earl Spence he's not a one-hitter quitter. He can get, by the 9th or 10th round, just from the accumulation of punches, that's when Earl Spence can get people out of there and get the fight to stop. But Earl Spence isn't a guy with one shot that's going to knock you out. Terrence Crawford can do that. He's shown that he can do that. He saw what he did to boy from England, man. Kell Brook knocked him out with a jab. So Terrence Crawford in one shot can get you out of it. Earl Spence can't. So when you start really looking at this, Terrence Crawford really needs to be at that pound for pound, the number one spot. And as far as him and Earl Spence in that fight, I'm not getting into that right now, but I'm giving Crawford the edge to be able to download data and figure Spence out. Now this guy Inu, he's a monster. He's a great fighter. The Japanese Manny Pacquiao, okay? But with him fighting Nonito Donaire, Nonito Donaire still had a lot in the tank. Yeah, he's an old man, but still had a lot in the tank. And he hurt him in that first round. And Inu said, it woke him up. He knew he couldn't afford to take those kind of shots from Donaire. But he got his shots off in that beautiful counter right hand that he's known for throwing, is what he caught Donaire with. So when you look at Inu, him moving up in weights, I think he stands a good chance to make a lot of noise as he moves up through the different weight classes. How far he'll go, I don't know, but he's a solid fighter. Not sure he's the number 2, but you can see how they want to put him on the list, just the way he's knocking people out. But I'm not sure he's the number 2. Not on this list, you know what I'm saying? I mean, you don't even have Boots Ennis on here. So it's a lot of great fighters, but let's be real. If we're just looking at talent and we're looking at potential, then we got to put Boots Ennis on here. But I can understand how they decide to put Inu on here, but he definitely shouldn't be number 2. Earl Spence Jr., the number 3 spot, based out of these names, he's top 5 for sure. Top 5. But that number 2 spot, to me, that's more of a Canelo Alvarez, in my opinion, or Tyson Fury. To me, in my opinion. Now, we know Canelo moving up in weight classes. He's done it before with Kovalev, but everybody wants to act like what he did with Bivol was just something extraordinary. He's already did it before and proved he can do it. He just got in over his head. But I would say Tyson Fury should be in that number 2 spot. Earl Spence Jr., he has 3 belts now. And him and Terrence Crawford are the number 1 and number 2. They're going to fight to figure that out in the welterweight division. So Terrence Crawford shouldn't be too far behind. Earl Spence shouldn't be too far behind Terrence Crawford. So I think Earl Spence is just in a good position as the number 3. I think Tyson Fury should be number 2. Canelo Alvarez, in my opinion, should be number 4 based on these names. And then Devin Haney should be number 5. Devin Haney's the undisputed. And let's not get caught up in that so much when we're talking about the rack and stack. Okay? Accomplishments matter. But Devin Haney winning the undisputed doesn't necessarily mean that him and Kambosos were the 2 top guys at 135. Okay? So let's just get that out there. Yeah, he's the man. He won all the straps. Gotta laud him. Good job, Devin Haney. So we're not trying to downplay that. But just got to be honest. Devin Haney and Kambosos really, that wasn't really the best in the division. Haney is, Kambosos not necessarily. So we're looking at those 135 pounders. We just got to be real about the situation. You got Lomachenko, you got Tank Davis. So we gotta be real. Really, who's the number one and number two? You know, so we can argue over that, but I think Devin Haney deserves to be in that discussion. But at the same time, just because he's the undisputed don't mean we throw him all the way up to the top of this list. I think he should definitely be number 5. So Crawford, on my list, I have Crawford. I got Tyson Fury. I got Earl Spence. Then I have Canelo. Then I have Devin Haney. Now, the rest of this list, you got Inoue, Usyk, Lomachenko, Bivol, Stevenson. Man, my number 6 would probably be, I had to give it to Usyk, man. I have to give it to Usyk. Usyk, for what he did as cruiserweight, what he did at cruiserweight, and what he's been able to do at heavyweight. It's impressive, man. You had to give the man his respect. And remember, he was an undisputed champion as well. He bubbled up, and look what he did. Now, Terrence Crawford is on his way. He has 1 belt, but he's on his way to unifying the division if he can get through Earl Spence. Then we have to sit down and really have another conversation about who's the number 1 and number 2. Now, if Usyk can come out here and beat Joshua again, well, we got to really think about it. Because Usyk is an exceptional talent. But you got to give AJ, who is not on this list, got to give him a good chance to knock out Usyk now that AJ has Robert Garcia in his corner. Robert Garcia is a phenomenal trainer. Robert Garcia is special. He was a good fighter. He was a great fighter. But it seems like his fit in life is being a trainer. And he loves it, and he does well. He's bringing his son along. But you can see with all of his fighters can perform in the ring. They can all fight. And he's produced champions. And Robert Garcia with AJ, I just think that's a positive. So AJ going into the rematch with Usyk, I'm going to give AJ the edge. Robert Garcia is not going to let him go in there and fight scared, fight small, and fight stupid. He's going to make sure he goes in with a perfect strategy. And if he sticks to the game plan, he should be able to pull it off. And in between rounds, if something goes awry, Robert Garcia is going to correct it on the spot. Unlike a guy like Teofimo and his dad, where his dad just like, go out there and kick that MFer's A, you know what I'm saying? Go out there and beat him up. Kick his M and F and A. That's not structured guidance. Like, that's not how you guide your fighter. Like, come back to the corner and that's what you hear. Trust me, what's going on in the fighter's head is, I'm trying. It's just not that easy. So that will be my number 6. Usyk. Then number 7, you got Inoue, Lomachenko, Bivol, Shakir. Now this is their list. Now I don't even think some of these guys should be on here, but I would put. Let me see. Lomachenko he's coming off the Comey win, but he's been out of pocket. You got Bivol, who did something pretty good with Canelo, Stevenson, and Inoue. I put Stevenson, Shakir as my number 7. And I would put Lomachenko at number 8, Bivol at 9, and Inoue at 10. That's how I'd rank it. But Lomachenko has been out. But when he comes back, I have no doubt he's going to get an opportunity at the undisputed distinction. Not sure if Devin's going to hang around that long, but I think he will. He has a nutritionist. He says he can make the weight, but he just doesn't look good at 135. He's killing himself. I think he needs to go to 140 sooner than later. But if he stays at 135 and he's still with Top Rank, they're definitely going to try to make that fight. Haney against Lomachenko is going to really show what Haney's about. We know Haney can fight. Haney's special. But Lomachenko, once he starts going into the matrix and those angles, and it's hard for people to really catch Lomachenko clean and hurt him. Lomachenko is a special fighter. But if Haney is able to control Lomachenko the way he's done his other opponents, then you can really say, okay, Haney is the man. Because now you have Haney, Lomachenko, and Tank. To me, are the three best in that division. Then you have, someone can argue that that's the 1 and 2 in the division. But then again, still got to get in and fight Tank. So they still got to fight. So that's Lomachenko, Shakir Stevenson. That's just a whole nother level of talent, man. I'm just excited to see what he's going to continue to do. Bivol, he's special. Not sure if how he's going to do with Beterbiev and Joe Smith, whoever wins that fight. But they're going to be going after Bivol because for the undisputed distinction at light heavyweight. But Bivol is talented. He is talented, man. We'll have to see what happens, but I'm not sure if he's going to be able to rise to the occasion against those other opponents. Those guys can fight too. He already beat Joe Smith, but that was a couple years ago. Joe Smith has evolved as a fighter, so I think the match will be a little bit different this time. That doesn't necessarily mean Bivol will lose. I just think it'll be a little different. And then Inoue, he's a beast, man. He's a monster, but Top Rank's going to do what they want to do with the ranking. But these aren't some. I would have most of these names in here, probably half of the names. But if I had my own list, which I may start doing that, my own list, man, Hood Champion Top 10, I definitely would have Boots Ennis in there. But I wouldn't have these guys, and I would probably have Katie Taylor in here too. But this is the men's ranking. The pound for pound ranking for the women, I don't know. I'd probably do a combined one because what Katie Taylor did, Amanda Serrano, these guys being undisputed. Serrano's still undisputed at, 130 or 126 or something? She's still undisputed. So when you see what Clarissa Shields is about to do with Savannah Marshall. So I know that this is the men's list, but we probably need to just combine it to really look at accomplishments. Forget the gender. Let's just look at what they're doing, talent level. Because if Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano, Clarissa Shields, or Savannah Marshall, if those four ladies were men, and we'd all be talking about them, all excited about them, they'd be making real money. But because they're women, they kind of get overlooked in a sense, and that's not right. But it is what it is. It's getting better, and it's still a long ways to go. But that's the ESPN's list. Haney at number 10 is just absurd, man. It's just absurd. You put, Inoue at number. You put Inoue at number 2, and we understand he's strong. He's a strong puncher. He has a lot of knockouts. But you just can't have Haney down at number 10. That's just a slap in the face. Man has an undisputed distinction. What he has done in his last few fights, going to Australia, that stuff matters. But at the same time, people may not think he's the number 1 or the number 1, 2, or 3 in that division. But when the guys have the belts, you got to give them some respect. You got to give them some credit. But I just don't think he should be all the way down at number 10. That's just madness, man. It's to me, it's just a slap in the face, man. I don't know. It's just frustrating. This is probably one of the most ridiculous lists that I've seen, and especially for it to come from ESPN, I think it's frustrating, man. But I do know that Inoue is a sound fighter. But it makes me wonder, like, when they come up with this list, do they just have employees over there voting, man? That's what I think, man. I just think they just have employees over there voting for their ranking, and that's how they come up with it. They're definitely not talking to any boxing pundits or any of these experts who can really explain or justify the rationale for how they're racking stacking these opponents. That's definitely not happening. But I think Haney should definitely be ahead of Loma. Because Loma, man, he gets unnecessary favoritism. He's good, don't get me wrong, but he gets a lot of favoritism. And I do think if he comes back and can still perform at a high level, I just think that I did a video. I think the lightweight division's cursed. I think it's all set up with the boogeyman to make sure those belts end up back in Loma's hands. And It's not because I don't think Devin Haney doesn't have the skill set to beat him. It's just these guys at the lightweight division, they're not holding on to those belts. So we'll see. I'm just watching Devin Haney to make sure he stays humble, keeps talking nice, keeps working with the kids in the gym, all the positive things he's doing. And I think Devin Haney over time, we'll just see him just keep getting better and better. But he needs to fight some of the bigger names now. He's the man. He's undisputed. People are going to be chasing him. But he's not the best fighter at 135, in my opinion. There's three of them, Tank, Lomachenko, and Haney. And you can decide what order you want to put them in. But I think they need to fight definitely to figure out who's the top dog. Yes, he has all the hardware, or he's calling it his jewelry. But it doesn't mean that he's the top 135 pounder, if you understand what I'm saying. But I'm going to leave it at that, man. Y'all keep cool. Appreciate the support. Shout out to all the veterans. I'm in the breeze.